Welcome to War Chronicle, where history is not just told, it's revealed. We dive into forgotten wars, legendary warriors, battlefield strategies, and the machines that ruled the skies. From ancient empires to modern militaries, this is where truth meets firepower. Is China's air power truly a threat to the region, or is it all just hype? Is Beijing's arsenal of indigenously designed aircraft a cause for concern, or are they simply catching up with what the rest of the world has had for decades? Is the People's Liberation Army Air Force modern enough to challenge American air superiority? Today we re-answering the extraordinary amount of questions that have come in about China's new J-35 fighter jet and why it might really make a difference in the region. So the Chinese J-35 is a stealth multi-role fighter jet rolled out by state-owned defense contractor Chengdu Aerospace Corporation of China in January 2022. The twin-engine single-seat J-35 is China's first indigenous aircraft carrier-capable fighter jet and the first to feature stealth characteristics. It was originally developed in collaboration with Russian engineers who assisted the Chinese in incorporating the best lessons learned from developing the country's prior domestically produced fourth-generation fighter jets like the J-10 and J-11. But along the way, the J-35 has grown into an entirely unique platform, sporting capabilities that have nothing to do with Russia, and its development shows us exactly how the People's Republic is taking great strides toward becoming a true peer competitor to the United States when it comes to advanced military aviation. The J-35 uses a number of technologies that have been in development in China for years. These include an active electronically scanned array, or AESA radar, infrared search and track, or IRST sensors, low-band and high-band satellite communications, an integrated defense and attack mission computer, an integrated optical sighting and attack system, and more. All of these things are not particularly rare in modern fighters, but they do represent real advancements in capability for China. They also represent a closing gap between Chinese weapons and those fielded by the US and other Western nations. These advancements culminated in a July test flight in which the J-35 reportedly launched a stealth supersonic anti-ship missile called the CJ-10A. That missile, much like the aircraft that launched it, is believed to be an indigenously developed weapon representing billions of dollars in investment, and a substantial improvement over the DFCF anti-ship missiles that China began developing back in 2004. The test launch of the CJ-10A took place from the Chinese aircraft carrier Liaoning, which itself represents a major leap forward for the plan, or the Chinese Navy's in-house carrier-capable aviation program. Although the Liaoning isn't a conventionally powered vessel like America's supercarriers, it does represent a substantial improvement in capability over China's earlier Harbin, which was refitted as an aviation training ship in 2012. The Liaoning is a modified refit of the unfinished Admiral Kuznetsov-class aircraft carrier that Russia had originally intended to build. China purchased the partially complete hull from the Soviet Union back in 1992, and after 20 years of finish work finally commissioned the ship in 2012. In addition to serving as a training ship, the Liaoning also carries J-15 VFAX, which are China's first attempt at carrier-based fighters. The Shenyang J-15 is actually based on the J-8, which is China's first indigenously developed third-generation fighter. Those aircraft entered service in 2013, and the Liaoning is also believed to carry variants of the KJ-700 early warning aircraft and the Z-20 helicopter. The Liaoning has a ski ramp that launches aircraft at an angle rather than the steam catapults found on American carriers. This is mostly a product of cost savings and the fact that China wanted to retain the ability to operate the carrier in shallow waters, where bigger waves could damage a steam catapult system. The J-35 will need to use catapults when deployed aboard future Chinese carriers. So the type of operations we see the Liaoning conducting may not be representative of what we would see from an American carrier or even China's own future carriers when they enter service. Now, even though the Liaoning can operate fixed-wing aircraft, it doesn't appear that China plans to use it as an offensive weapon. In fact, there are some serious doubts as to whether or not China will ever field conventionally powered aircraft carriers because of the sheer amount of maintenance required to keep them at peak operating condition. And the fact that their nuclear-powered submarines are still so relatively new that China is only just beginning to field them in meaningful numbers. Now that said, China has begun construction on 2 new flat-top training vessels that look a lot like conventionally powered aircraft carriers. but it appears likely that these vessels will simply serve to train pilots and test new equipment before moving on to something larger, much like the Liaoning did. But here's the thing. The J-35 makes all the difference because it solves a problem that China hasn't really had a good solution for until now. The J-35 can launch off a ski ramp like the J-15 can. But because of its smaller size and lighter weight, the J-35 can also use catapults, which means that China has an aircraft that can be used to train pilots on smaller training vessels, like the new Type 003 training carriers, or future carriers like the Type 004. And since it's stealth, it also gives China a fighter that can project air power well beyond the reach of China's borders, thereby addressing one of China's critical weaknesses in defending its interest across such a vast ocean. The J-35 represents a huge step forward in China's drive to develop advanced military systems. Chinese defense analysts say the J-35 will fill the same role in China's Air Force that the F-35 does in America's. But that's actually not entirely accurate. See, the F-35 is designed to be a low-cost platform that can perform multiple roles. For America, that meant building a trainer that can also fly combat missions. For China, the J-35 isn't a replacement for the J-10 or J-11, nor is it an advanced trainer. It's a dedicated combat aircraft built around stealth technology. The J-10 and J-11 can perform several roles, and the J-20 has more in common with America's SF-22 Raptor than any other Chinese fighter. But the J-35 is going to be an electronic warfare and suppression of enemy air defenses or SEAD aircraft. It will carry specialized pods to suppress enemy radar and missile systems and then engage high-value targets deep inside enemy airspace. Smaller size and lower weight mean that the J-35 will also be able to supercruise or fly faster than the speed of sound without afterburners. This will allow it to operate closer to the edge of battle space, where it can better support other Chinese aircraft flying into contested airspace. Of course, none of this matters if the aircraft can't survive inside contested airspace. But that's where China's recent investments in directed energy weapons start to look pretty promising. We've talked about these before, but I don't think I've made the connection very clear, so here goes. Last year, China conducted tests on a laser weapon they referred to as the ZM-100. All of this is to say that the J-35 may not be a direct equivalent to the F-35, but it does seem to be filling a similar niche within China's Air Force. And the introduction of this new fighter brings China a big step closer to achieving true peer status with the United States. When it comes to air power, of course, fielding new advanced platforms isn't quite the same thing as having pilots trained to fly them. Of course, the United States has roughly 5 times the number of combat aircraft China has, not to mention a global network of bases and a massive fleet of refueling tankers. So despite China's progress, they are still a long way from achieving true parity with the United States. But what do you think? Is China's air power a growing concern in your part of the world? Or is it simply a known issue? Let me know in the comments below. And do unforget to leave your suggestions for topics that I should cover in future episodes of Air Power. And of course, don't forget to subscribe. I'll see you again real soon.